Okay. Hi, everybody. It's Claudia with CabinTalk. And today we have again Harald Kautz-Vella with us, who you guys know from a few different subjects already. And he is a biologist, a chemist, a researcher, a scientist, and you have to give us the rest of it. But today we will talk about circumcision. But that's the big topic. We've had, I think, 4 or 5 other big topics already, which you can see on YouTube under CabinTalk, Harald Kautz-Vella. It comes right up. You can see all our other talks. But Harald, give us another quick little bio of yourself, if you don't mind.
Just regarding the things that tie into our talk today. Since 2012, I'm researching different aspects of transhumanism. And this is something that roots back into biblical times. It's not like the cutting-edge science we have today. It is also the cutting-edge science, but it applies some bioenergetic possibilities that we know as demons from the old times. And I think today they call them co-opted insects. And the entire circumcision topic has to do with trauma, the emptied space in the human body, and the way this empty space is possessed by these demonic entities and what this does and whose interests are served by this. So this is kind of the main thesis of today, just to make you curious a bit. And it is everything out of a combination of science, scientific approach, and personal experience, because certain things, especially if it's like consciousness and trauma based, the only one who can measure consciousness is the consciousness itself. So if you want to know what happens inside, you need to observe yourself. And this is basically the corner out of which I access the topic, trying to heal myself just because I love to heal myself at certain points to improve life quality. And this is how I collected the experience I would like to share today.
Great. Awesome. And that is really, it is such an important topic. And we just tried to go live, but then our audio didn't work, so we're just going to repeat this one more time. But it's such an important topic, and just recently it was in the news because Denmark basically, the doctors and scientists of Denmark basically said it's inhumane to cut off the foreskin of a perfectly healthy boy. And it's absolutely unnecessary unless there is really a medical condition where it needs to be done, which is an absolute rarity. And so I feel it's a really important topic. It's not one of the easy topics, but I feel it's a very important topic. And so I'm really grateful you're willing to come on and share your experience and share your knowledge on that subject, because it goes so much more than just cutting off literally part of a baby's penis. It goes much further than that. And so I'm glad that you're shedding some light on it.
I would like to trigger you a bit.
Okay, I'm ready.
Not only you, also certain people within the audience. I actually thought about spotting a YouTube video that shows the act itself.
Oh.
And just implementing it by sharing screen.
Right.
But then if you imagine doing this, you can actually feel the reaction of the audience. Everybody will go like this.
Right.
Yeah?
Right.
I don't want to see this.
Yeah.
And this is kind of the trigger point. Whoever basically goes like this, I don't want to see this, but is thinking about doing it to his own children.
Right. Right.
He should reconsider how he acts.
Yeah.
Because something we don't even want to look at. How can he want to do it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And this is something. And then I did it half an hour ago. I started to search for videos on YouTube showing the actual act. And I get videos from all the corners of the world.
Wow.
showing how the tribes do it in Bangladesh, in Africa, whatever. Yeah, but and then you get kind of the medical thing when there's something really wrong that needs to be fixed for health reasons, which is kind of one of the common excuses in the US. There you get a video here and there showing the best method of doing it. But you don't get a single YouTube on the usual thing in the Western community. So there is something there that wants this to be in the hidden, that nobody wants to address. There's a huge, like the trauma in the body of the human that has this done. There's the same trauma space kind of in society that nobody dares to look at it.
Right, right.
And this is why we don't have any. First, I thought maybe it's like YouTube is not allowed to show snuff movies or explicit sex scenes. They're not allowed to show penises. That's not the case. They show it in Bangladesh.
Right.
Yes.
Wow.
So we're not going to do this because I hope it's enough to just mention it, to bring some consciousness into who would be triggered by looking at it in that way.
Right.
This is why I just wanted to mention we're not going to do it because it's emotional enough.
And Harald, I posted a little bit about circumcision this past week. And I had nurses come on that would say, it's absolutely inhumane. And now they numb it a little bit, but just a little bit. And the babies are still screaming. And I cannot even fathom. That's why I go, no, because I would also never do it. It's kind of like, it's when people eat a lot of animal food and you show them how it's actually produced, nobody wants to look either, because intrinsically we know how wrong it is, and so we can't watch it either. So I think it's on a similar plane, sort of, where we know intrinsically it is just wrong on every level, and it's still being done, which is why we are like, no, I don't even want to have any part of it and not look at it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, maybe everything I want to share, it's out of my own experience, both of experiencing it, the outcome of it in my sexual life, and especially now the healing phase that I've been through for the last year, which basically reveals the difference it makes in a very explicit way. It was done when I was age of, I think, about 7 months. So not directly after birth, a little bit later. The reason was kind of already knowing that my family wanted to convert to Judaism, so it was in their minds already, and they thought, let's do it now, because if you do it later, it's more traumatizing. So it had been done when I still was a baby. And everything kind of felt normal for quite a while for me. I was nothing special with it in my social environment, and I didn't have any problems left over as long as I was a child.
Right.
And the first thing then that or let's say the first time when I thought about that this might be the thing that makes the difference was actually when I realized as a teenager that I had a quite big sexual activity and desire inside myself. It was like not normal. It was not like I would expected it to be. It was as if every collision of skin with whatever, underpants or whatever, was exciting me. And it was just a phase of extreme sexual activity. Still with myself, no girls around, not even that age where you think about it. And on the other hand, the second thing where I realized that I'm not behaving normal, without saying that this is directly related. It can be something else, but I realized, okay, I'm horny like hell. But I had a really hard time to dare coming close to women. So there was kind of this kissing phase when I was 15, which kind of was okay. And when I grew a bit older, like 17, where you can imagine something happening, I completely, somehow I pulled back from women. I pulled back from the possibility. I remember the last thing that happened was actually that I really was in love with a girl, and I visited her at her place, and she just made the suggestion. We were not even a couple. It was just kind of in the waiting position to see how she reacts on me. And then she just like daily conversation invited me to take a bath with her. And the next thing I remembered was that I was back home and I didn't remember anything else. So I had a complete blackout at that point. And when we met again, she was just grinning and laughing, stating that I left kind of a bit panicky. And that obviously it was too much, that offer.
Right.
And after that, nothing serious happened in that direction for quite a couple of years. So I started very late with relationships. And with the first relationship I really tried to go into, I realized that I don't feel myself at all. It was as if the lower part of my body was completely non-existing.
Wow.
By not feeling it and also by its function, which is a catastrophe for a young man. You know, if you kind of diagnose yourself with impotence, this is kind of the worst case scenario you can go through in that age. Right. So I was in quite deep, not depression, but I was extremely worried about myself. Just filled my mind 24/7 and what's going to happen, how can you fix this? Right. The more you try, the more traumatized you get from trying and not doing it. And at a certain point I got into a relationship with a really loving and patient girl. And after 3 weeks of just being in intimacy without having sex, I realized suddenly my body reacted in the way it should react. Everything worked. But the feeling that I could connect to it was extremely distant. I could see my body reacting without feeling the impulse to react on the physical plane. So I was fully functional. It also was like fun having sex. It felt good, but the kind of part that was completely not there was the link between desire and the physical feeling establishing in the body, as if there was an area of disconnection that was not me.
Right.
And I just got used to it in a way. Right. And it didn't affect, at least at that point I thought it didn't affect my relationships. So I was kind of happy with it until something really funny happened. It was in Central Africa. I spent 3 months in Zambia with the geological mapping as a student. And it was like 3 weeks holiday, then 6 weeks working in the field, somewhere in the jungle without any connection to the outer world. And then there were another 3 weeks of holidays. And I ended up to be the last one of all the students being in Lusaka. And I found the continent a bit scary, so I was really looking forward to getting on the plane. You know, when you're traveling completely alone, I just made a decision to write a little traveling guide on Zambia, because you couldn't buy any guides back then on that country, because it was not touristic at all. Just one of these Central African things where nobody comes to. So I managed to fill the weeks with some travels and deeds to get information for that guide, and then I was really looking forward to leaving the country. It's like, you know, this situation where you're not allowed to stop with a car at a red traffic light, because either you get pulled out of the car and shot immediately, or the police gets at you and screams at you, why you dare to stop at a red traffic light, because you might get shot. You know, this type of country.
That's my kind of driving, though. I love countries like that.
I was really on the brink of, oops, finally out of here. And I forgot to confirm my flight. I was completely running out of money, and I knew there was exactly one plane a week leaving. And I really had to look into the option of having messed it up and being forced to stay another week in Lusaka without money. And I got so angry with myself that I really immediately I got a Woody out of anger. You know, like you see this in all these funny biological films about ape tribes who still have this free flow of emotion. And I realized that this missing link in your own emotional perception suddenly was there. It was not out of horniness, it was out of anger, but I could exactly see, oh, there it is. You know, there's something in between that you never felt before, that was as intense as nothing else. And I just wondered back then, how comes that you don't have this type of emotion just because of sexual attraction? Why do you need to get angry to feel yourself, to sense yourself in such an intense way? So I kind of realized, okay, there's something wrong at that point. But for years I didn't manage to get back to that point.
Right.
It was just a unique experience that got stuck in my memory somewhere as, okay, I have to remember there's something left that is not okay. If you kind of get to the point where you can grab it because it's kind of important. And that was kind of a one-off when I was 26 that I just kept in my mind for all those years. And then in 2012 I started to discover the demonic world connected to the transhumanistic agenda. And the way we approached the topic was not only understanding the science, looking at the genetic sequencing of demons, looking at the internal papers of the agencies who create this stuff. You know, this is kind of the scientific part. We also always looked into ourselves to see at what point you find what demonic entity, and trying to find out exactly how they work, how they alter the human character, behavior, psychology, and then of course getting rid of them. And it was like always understanding how one works, and once the story was fully understood, then we had a possibility to remove them, to experience, okay, what comes after. So this kind of started with even earlier. It started even earlier before I went into transhumanism. I remember once a healer spotted like demonic entities attached to my aura, and he had them removed. And it was like, okay, one of your former lives you had a contract, they protected you from certain death, and you agreed on having them with you for the next incarnations. But they were removed. And this was the first experience that we had couple of combo sessions where I realized, okay, there were some traumata in my abdomen that were healed by the combo ceremony, frog poison ceremony. And everybody in the room could see the demonic entities leaving. So there's kind of a tradition of chucking them out of my system just for personal healing. And the ones connected straightly to the transhumanistic agenda, the major demonic entities are the snakes and the spiders. The snakes known from the Garden in Paradise and the conversation with Eve, and the spiders known from Masonry as the god of the Freemasons, Yabulon. So these are the core demonic entities that are around. Also NASA is working mainly with the spider demons, connected to smart dust and the Morgellons disease and all those things. You can look that up in my other lectures. It's kind of the scientific part. So the first experience that really changed my life was getting rid of the snakes. This was a major shift because they basically function as a bypass connecting mind and sexuality, or mind and instinct, bypassing the heart chakra. Normally everything should go through the central axis, so before you experience something sexual, you have your heart as a filter to decide whether this is something done in love or experienced in love, and only then your mind becomes aware of possibilities. So if you're in the natural state, then sexual emotions are filtered by the heart. And if there's no love, there's no attraction. This is how it should be. And this is what kind of the snake shifted into a completely different thing, where just looking at a naked woman is already exciting.
Right.
And this is kind of what these demons want, because they live from sexual energy. So the more happens, the better for them. And that was kind of the first big step in I don't want to say healing, but coming back to natural human spirituality and sexuality, getting rid of the snake. But it was not everything. I realized, okay, it feels better now. Many ways of manipulation were not possible anymore, but there was something still controlling my sexuality in a way that I was not aware of the triggers. Like I described it before, with having this gap that I don't feel. So this did not disappear from this. And over the month, it kind of became clearer and clearer, just with the help of my recent girlfriend and partner, who could basically spot a spider demon that was sitting on the trauma of circumcision.
Wow.
Occupying that space. That actually it was this spider demon that was controlling my sexuality. Which was uncomfortable for her, because she could sense the demonic entity in all the sexual interaction.
Right.
And it's not a pleasant energy when you get in contact with these demonic entities. Especially if you're clairvoyant and feel what's really happening. Especially if you are not as full with demons. Then it doesn't matter. It's always the same game. Like if you have two people, we have the same demonic possessions. The demons delete the awareness of the demon in the other. So the humans are just looking at each other and look completely straight and clear and clean. If you have one human with a demon and the other one without, the one without will always feel the demonic presence in the other one. So this is basically how it worked. So it did influence my relationship in a negative way, not being on one level.
Right.
So there was some pressure from my side. I really want to get rid of this. And but the spiritual advice that came out of the other worlds always was like, no, we could take it away, but there's something you still need to learn. This is always with with all demonic entities, when they need to be removed, the first thing is learning the lesson and finding the right affirmation that basically is nullifying the demonic contract you have. This is kind of the unwritten rule with all these demonic entities. If you don't let them in, they can't come in. So there's always some kind of contract. Mm-hmm. And especially with circumcision, if you go to the Hebrew language, this is Brit Milah. This is a contract.
Oh, really?
By the name in the Hebrew language, this is a contract. Of course, it's a contract with God, but who knows who God is? All those gods
right.
of biblical times, or most of them turned out to be just camouflage demonic entities.
Yeah.
This is not going straight against Judaism now. This is just against all religions that always have this demonic aspect plugged on top, where humans basically try to do things out of a good intention, but fall for these tricks. Yeah, so it is a contract, and actually the affirmation I got to that finally made it possible to have this thing removed was I would rather face my own healing in impotence than enjoy demonic sex.
Right.
This is kind of the complete inversion of the decision I took when I realized, okay, it doesn't work with me when I was 20-something, but suddenly it did work. I knew something is wrong in the way I perceive it, but I contracted this demon to make my body function at that point. And I just had to, by heartful affirmation, which means not only saying it, but also meaning it from the bottom of your heart, say, no, I will rather not function at all again, like it was in these creepy, crappy days at the beginning,
right.
Than having the demonic solution working within me. And then everybody was kind of cheering up, yeah, he got it!
Right.
And we could go to the healing ceremony to remove the spider. So this is kind of a short story of how I got in and how I got out again. And now from that perspective of being out again, now I can observe how my psyche and my spirit changed and how it functions now compared to how it did function with this spider entity on that trauma. And this very much, it's interesting, it very much ties into the talk we had on the drama triangle.
Yep.
Because maybe we can take it by comparison. The snakes that most of the people have as a kundalini and tumu snake winding around the backbone, they have the ability to filter out aspects of your train of thoughts, deleting things. This you might call cognitive dissonance. In a way. They can add illusion.
Harald, you got a little fuzzy there for a moment, but you're coming back.
Yeah. Okay. So the function of the snake goes into two directions. Taking out things from the stream of consciousness, from the train of thoughts, which we can call cognitive dissonance, and adding things to the perceiving of reality that are actually not there, which we call magic. And these two functions, deleting what they don't want us to see and adding what we should see, I considered as kind of the basic function of how this matrix is maintained. Tricking us into a perception of the world, that creates predictive behavior.
Yep.
Yeah? Setting the right triggers is a way to control us. Then we still act out of free will, but if you basically remove the triggers that could bring you to another direction, you still control the path. And what I realized after the spider was gone, that actually it is a 100% parallel function of the spider on the sexual chakra, because from there it controls the entire emotional body. And it does exactly the same. It lets through all the emotions that serve the drama triangle.
Right.
And it filters out everything that would interfere with the drama triangle concept. If I compare it now, my emotional body is like a landscape. Right. It's not like single triggers that come in like singular concept. It's just a moving, merging, flowing landscape that morphs into shapes, and everything is connected. Emotions come in combination. Like you are able to feel sadness and joy in the same second, because it's not this or that.
Right.
And what this spider did was basically filtering out single emotions that would serve the victim role, that would serve the perpetrator role, like anger, or would serve the rescuer role, just to trick people into one of the three gaming positions.
Right.
So it's 100% analogy to the snake function, just not for the mental field, but for the emotional body.
Right. Right.
And this I would, from my own perception, I would say this is the core function. And there was one thing I forgot to say that is kind of important to see, to what extent the entire thing is trauma based. When I had my own little boys, of course, from the family, the question came up, are you going to do it with them as well? Right. Are you following the Jewish tradition? And for me, it was, at the first glance, of course I do. How can I not?
Right.
And then I kind of emotionally got into what actually is it doing it, and it felt wrong from a completely different perspective. It felt wrong, but I still had this voice telling me, of course you do. Where I cannot say if this was the voice of the spider who wanted to reproduce the setup, or whether this is kind of the classical trauma thing, that if you suffer from a trauma, you have the tendency to repeat it later.
Right, right.
Yeah, like somebody who is abused as a child will abuse his children.
Right.
Because it feels natural, it feels like there's no way around doing it. And I'm very happy that at that point of the story, I had the strength to follow my heart. Mm-hmm. So I just took the decision, no. Yeah, I can't say I'm feeling bad with it, yeah, because I was not at all into any direction of understanding or healing the issue. But I decided, no, I'm not going to do it, because why should we born in a way that is not perfect? You know, yeah. That was kind of the thought I could hook into and stop myself from repeating it. And the interesting thing was that at the moment of doing this decision, of not forwarding the tradition, I immediately sensed a huge anger against my parents. Mm-hmm. How could you do this to me? And this anger was connected for the first time to the ability to physically sense the trauma inside my own body. Mm-hmm. And it didn't disappear since then. Yeah, whenever I physically basically tune into my sexual organs, just to see how do I feel down there, first thing that comes up is the traumatic memory, physically. Like, And then, if you have, this was late. I mean, this was when my first son was born. I was 27. So that was years after the first experience of having sex. And then I realized, or later I realized, okay, with this emotion inside your body, it's not a miracle that you had difficulties to feel yourself. Yeah, when the first thing coming up is this tremendous memory of being injured, and the most sensitive spot of your body.
Right, right.
So this also connects if somebody kind of has the impulse to do it to his own children, and he had it done with himself when he was a child. Just be aware of the likelihood when you rebel against the tradition that you will have to deal with a lot of anger against your own parents.
Yeah.
Which is okay. I mean, shit happens, deal with it.
Yeah.
Bring it out of the world. Don't forward it to the next generation.
Exactly. Exactly. I mean, it's such a, the part that is hard for me to understand is that people think that because they do it to a child, to a young child, to a baby, it's not as traumatic. I mean, I don't know where that comes from. Just because the child can scream and talk and say something doesn't mean it doesn't hurt the same way, and it doesn't mean it doesn't affect the child the same way.
It's just the difference is that up to age 2, children do not remember and have a really hard time to reaccess and heal the trauma.
Right.
So the parents will not be forced to deal with it, because if it comes up at all, it comes up in later age.
Yeah.
So it's a lazy thing. Just to the experience says you don't have to deal with it when you do it at young age. I know from Muslim families that actually it is a huge issue. The boys don't want it to be done. And the parents get in deep trouble if the children are rebellious, running away, protesting, hating them for years for having it done. So yeah, at a later age, it is problematic because it directly goes against the free will of the child.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I think it goes directly against the will of the child at any age, because it doesn't consent. It's not consenting and saying, yeah, that's fine with me, no problem. Mm-hmm. It can't. And so it's not a decision that should be made at any age for the child. If somebody wants to be circumcised when he's an adult, then please go ahead and do what you can to stop yourself from. But while somebody is a little baby or a child at any age, I'm just against any body mutilation at that age. Just like I'm against changing your sex before you are of age. If people feel called to do so, I think it's an adult decision and not a child's decision. And I feel really strongly about that.
Yeah. I remember 2 sentences that are very emotional on that topic. One is kind of the precise biological description, which is removing a part of the male clitoris.
Right.
Yeah. If you just digest that sentence, you get a kick of the emotion that is within the trauma.
Yeah.
Just to whoever doesn't have the experience, just digest and swallow that sentence, and then you feel what it means. And the other thing that I don't even remember, maybe it was even you who mentioned the quote, or who quoted the woman when we thought about doing this talk. There was one woman that said she deeply regrets having it done to her boy. Because before, she always got these beautiful smiles of the little baby. And after it was done, she never, ever got that smile from him again.
Oh.
Yeah. And this is kind of the motherly perspective. And in the phase, basically getting prepared to the healing procedure. And in my case, I had I wasn't even too much aware of the topic, but I gave a seminar in Berlin, and there was one girl that was massively mistreated as a child in the seminar, and she was no eye contact, very weak voice, complaining, completely sucked up into a victim role, like nobody loves her and she's so lonely and blah 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 blah. And while she was kind of complaining about this loneliness, she didn't even risk an eye contact. So
Right.
so we went into it's something I like to do in seminars. Kind of, you have like 8, 10, 12 people, and some of them are willing to go into healing in the group situation, which is very courageous, but
Right.
it's the best way to learn what it means to go. And she was one of those girls who were courageous enough to risk that journey. And the first thing I just said to open the field for things to happen was saying that in this situation she's completely responsible for being lonely, because she's got 8 people with loving and open hearts and open minds around her. And she is there with this voice, with this low-tone voice, and with not risking eye contact. Can you feel that you isolate yourself in this moment? Taking self-responsibility for the state she is in. First
Right.
big step. And then she kind of said, no, she doesn't have any memory of her childhood except of one, and this was her trying to do the math exercises in the afternoon, and she couldn't solve the equations, and her mother just grabbed her head and punched it on the table.
Oh,
Didn't
God.
stop. Yeah, this was kind of the only memory she had from her childhood. And I asked her, does it make you angry? She said, no, I'm not angry. So kind of the thing was
Wow.
kind of the trauma itself kind of became visible, and the what was obvious in this situation was kind of the core belief system that she was in. I do not trust the ones I love. This comes from the experience to be mistreated by your own family. You're mistreated by those who you love, and what automatically comes out of this was basically the belief system, or the course belief idea. I cannot trust those whom I love, and this is how she behaved all the time. And I said,
Right.
could you please say the sentence, I trust the ones I love? And she almost choked on that sentence. She couldn't say it.
Yeah.
It was impossible. Then she realized, before she was kind of pissed off that I tried to bring her into self-responsibility. When she realized she can't say this sentence, she realized, okay, I do have a problem that might be solved. And then I told her, could you please say the opposite? If this doesn't work, maybe it's wrong. You know? Could you say, I trust the ones I love? And she said it. And then she went like, oh, shit. I could say it, but I could feel it's a complete lie. Yeah, so the thing we then did, it's not so important in this context now, was rediscovering her anger so that she could let it out. And when the anger was out, when she reconnected to the anger, she completely changed in behavior. She was in constant eye contact. She was loving, laughing, completely freed. It was so beautiful to see how she basically
Blossomed.
woke up to life in those 2 days. And at the end of the 2 days, I said, okay, let's close the event with a ceremony. We took her in the middle of a circle, and she was again supposed to say, I trust the ones I love. And it came in tears with her, and then the crying morphed into laughing.
Right.
And at that point, kind of, I had to laugh too. It was so intense in this moment.
Right.
I just joined into the laughing, and at a certain point, I realized I was laughing more than she was laughing. I
Right.
realized, oops, Now she took the first step, and she's pulling me into my own healing at that point. And like when trauma are solved, like you cry or laugh, and then the motion of your organs, it feels like at a certain point something falls into the right place, like a joint that is out of the position. When you put it back, it's painful for the moment, but then suddenly, whoo, you get into this state of relaxation. And I realized that I was laughing myself through a healing process.
Right.
So I realized, oops, you kind of worked on the girl, and without even realizing, you must have worked on the topic within yourself at the same time. So I asked myself, okay, where's that point of I don't trust the ones I love?
Right.
And looking for that point 100% led back to the circumcision topic, because I could literally feel it at the moment. Where did you lose your trust in the ones you love? Oh, there it is.
Right.
Yeah, just asking myself, where does this come from? And this is kind of the thing on the psychological level, is this incredible mistrust in the surrounding that should give you the most joy.
Right. Now, Harald, I just want to turn on the light. It's getting dark in here. Give me 1 minute.
Okay.
It'll just be 1 second.
Yep.
Okay. I think this is a little better because it's getting really dark here already. But wow, what an amazing story. What a great story. And I see for myself that laughing oftentimes is a very healing release to deal, to shed things, I've definitely experienced that, because for a while during meditation, I couldn't stop laughing. I just could not stop laughing. I couldn't have a serious meditation if my life would have depended on it. And so I was just laughing for 10 minutes straight. But it felt very cleansing. It felt very releasing. And so, yeah, I can absolutely see how that's the case.
Yeah, and that's basically it. I don't think we need to say much more about it. Or the rest might be politics or whatever. It's the core is basically the emotional crime you commit when you have it done with your child.
Right.
And just ask yourself, would you do it with your own hands? And if you wouldn't do it with your own hands, it shouldn't be done. Very simple.
Yes.
If absolutely. It was done to you, do you feel the trauma? Are you willing to go through the pain of discovering the trauma and the anger against the one who caused it?
Right.
And if afterwards you still make the same decision to do it to your own children out of whatever reason, it's something different, but at least it's not this forwarding of trauma because you're not able to face your own emotions that are basically stored in the trauma. This is a sad story. This means that there's one generation lost where healing does not happen.
Right. And again, I do want to point out, because I saw a few comments along those lines, this has nothing to do with actually a medical procedure that has to be done for the health of the child. That is a whole different ballgame altogether, And I actually know a boy that had to get a procedure where the parents opted out, but when he became early teenager, it got clear that something needed to be done, and that's a whole other ballgame. That is a necessity, and not cutting around on a healthy baby that will really be traumatized physically as well as emotionally for a long time, if not forever. Yeah. So it's a very different procedure, it's a very different. And then it was under anesthesia and all those things. So it's a very, very different experience for the child as well.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it's interesting that actually we do have the religious traditions in Judaism, in Islam, in African tribes concerning little girls mainly.
Right.
Which is basically a religious or a traditional issue that still works by forwarding the trauma from generation to generation. The thing I do not get exactly is where it comes from in the United States.
Right.
Because there is no religion forcing people to do it. I have no clue where it came from.
Right. I don't either, honestly. I know of some women going, "Oh, that's gross," if the foreskin is still there. I'm like, "What are you talking about? It's gross. It's part of the body. I don't understand," And
like I heard
but it's brainwashing,
like,
honestly.
Yeah, it's easier to keep it clean. So who tells you that it must be easy to keep yourself clean? It's important that you keep yourself clean, whether it's easy or not. This is just an act of self-love to keep yourself clean.
And it's such a crazy argument to me, Harald, because if it goes about cleanliness of your genital area, then women should cut off their labia lips. I mean, it doesn't even make any sense. You know what I mean? You just have to clean yourself, and that's all there is to it, whether you're circumcised or not circumcised. And then the other thing that I feel in the U.S., there is this disconnect with countries like Ethiopia, where there is a lot of circumcision for girls, basically, where they cut off the clitoris. It's so, people are like appalled by it. Like really like, oh, that is horrible, that's horrific, we have to stop that immediately. But with little boys, I mean, it's not that much different. It's a very similar thing. And so I don't understand how people are appalled when it's done to a little girl, but are okay with it. Like it's the norm to do it to a little boy.
It's this is very clear, the projection of the trauma.
Yeah.
If you do not feel it within yourself, but it is somewhere in the mental field, the knowledge about this is wrong is there. So if you see somebody else doing it, you project all your anger and all your twisted emotions onto the other one doing it instead of looking at your own address.
Right.
Yeah, this is kind of normal behavior when traumatas are there. But the thing is, you need to become aware of the traumatic character of the issue.
Yeah.
And then you can deal with self-healing, just first accepting that there is something to heal.
Right.
And the families and the traditions.
Right. My motto is never cut into a healthy body, period. End of story. I mean, and even if your body gets sick, make that truly a last resort, not let's just cut it out, or let's just cut away at it. A very, very last resort, because I do believe every time we cut into the body, there is a scar that is deeper than just the physical scar. And it should really be only under extreme circumstances that we do that, and not because it's a tradition or it's the expected thing or it has become the norm in a very crazy world. It certainly wouldn't be the norm in a kind and compassionate world. So I hope that people take that to heart for themselves and especially for their little babies. And thank you again, Harald, so much for coming on. It's always a pleasure. And I hope we'll see you again.
We have to think about topics. I'm running out of them.
Well, one of the topics, honestly, that I really, really, really want to talk about also with you especially is geoengineering. And we have to do, I know you've done different talks on that and I've watched them, but it's such a big topic and it's such a constant topic that I feel, and it's a topic where people are starting to be more and more aware of it. And I think that would be really also a great topic. I know you're sick of it almost, but One more time.
Yeah.
One more time.
Okay.
So that would be great. And I'm sure we think of others. I mean, it's a never ending. It's never ending. It really isn't. But thank you so much again. And well, for you, it's nighttime already. And
yeah, early evening.
Early evening. Yeah.
Okay, not so early.
Yeah,
for me still
10:30. Yeah, you're a night owl, so for you it's a little early.
Yeah.
Thank you again, and it was really a pleasure as always. See you soon.
My pleasure. See you.